Wiki-Wolf-packs, a case study in how Wikipedia Wolfpacks destroy you, even when all the arguments are on your side. So this happened to me. I had a new draft about the Seton miracles, which was a very famous story that occurred in Washington, D.C. in 1991 and 1993. I had over a dozen Washington Post articles and U.S. News and World Report article and a People magazine article. So this should be something that is worthy to be on Wikipedia. But as you'll see here, that there are people who fought tooth and nail to prevent it. So here's the key. If someone has a dunce hat on their comment, then that comment is an instance of hypocrisy or projection. If they have a Pinocchio head, it means that that comment is a liar or it is a massive error. So, and I can put up to 5 Pinocchio heads depending how much of a lie or error it is. If they have a gear, it means they're an administrator. And if they have this E on a scroll, it means that there was much more evidence presented, which I, of course, don't have space to put here. So it's just all abbreviated in that little black E scroll. Okay, evidence. All right, so here I was in the start of June, and I first presented my draft, and along came a decent reviewer, double grazing, found 2 problems with it, so I worked hard to replace that, resubmitted the draft, waited 2 months. In comes another good reviewer, Absurd in 4042. I wish he had left more detail, but he did later. Still, no complaints. So I submitted a 3rd time, and then it starts when Sulfur Boy comes in and says the same thing. Neutral point of view. Your draft is not neutral. So I didn't believe it because I had just worked really hard on this. So I went over to his talk page and I said, why? And his response was, miracles don't exist. Sorry. Like, nothing about my draft. He's just saying the very topic doesn't belong on Wikipedia because it's a miracle. Like, that would be bigotry, I said. If you actually made that argument, that's your argument? That would be bigotry if you made that argument. So I was trying to induce him not to, and he stuck to his guns. Yeah, no, I'm not allowing this. But the fact that I said that would be bigotry, he cross-applied it to as if I had said, you are a bigot. There is a fine difference between the two because I was trying to invite him to not be a bigot, whereas he made it a personal, subjective issue as if I have, like, anger problems and that I lost control and just retaliated at him in an ad hominem personal hatred way, rather than do as I actually did, which was stay on topic, which is the neutral point of viewness and the worthiness of this topic to be on Wikipedia. So he threatened me, like, I will get you blocked if you keep talking here on my page. So, okay, all right. I just copied the conversation over to the draft talk page and just left. But I'll go through other means. I'm not going to get, like, unnecessary demerits because Wikipedia is supposed to be a place where there are many opinions and sets of eyes. But while I was doing that, while I was deciding what else I was going to do, along came Sulfur Boy's friend Iris Chronomia, saw that I had, in his words, accused him of bigotry, and decided to accuse me of bigotry. You got to understand what their objective is right at the start. When you first arrive someplace and they look at your topic, your article title, and decide, uh-oh, this is against my, in Sulfur Boy's case, atheistic religion, or in Iris Chronomia's case, probably Shinto or other pagan religion, like manga or one of these cartoon religions that are always using hexes and spells and things, then they will try to pretend like they are being discretionary and professional, but all their actions will be to kill you. So that's what's going to happen here. But the way they always start is to try to prevent you from getting standing at all, to even open your mouth or make your case at all. They'll try to rule you out because of some fault supposedly in your very substance, independent of anything you do. So Iris Chronomia will do this spectacularly. First of all, Iris Chronomia will say that I am an ideologue. I'm a proselyte, as if I'm just like some religious evangelist who has come here, and I'm not like professional and open-minded, but I'm just trying to turn Wikipedia into a evangelization tool. And so Iris Chronomia will nominate me, my whole account, for deletion as being here only for promotional purposes. And so, at the same time, Iris Chronomia will, of course, nominate my draft itself for speedy deletion, okay? as if this is a no-brainer. You editors should just do this and don't think about it. It's so simple. You know, the acting, the posturing is like so hypocritical, because you know Iris Chronomia did not read my whole draft, did not check my sources to see how strong of an article it was. So all this is an attempted fool's mate to just take a wild shot at the moon and see if they get lucky and just kind of delete me before I can even open my mouth or get going. Okay, so I, of course, immediately as fast as I could, put up my paper trail to contest each of these deletions, and so that when the administrators would arrive, as they did, they would see, oh, this is not some no-brainer case, I better actually read it, and they read it, and so Buster Dees here said, no, his account is fine, and so Iris Chronomia said, gulp, all right, I see, I must have made a mistake. I'll be so generous as to also retract my nomination of the draft for speedy deletion. Okay, fine. I'm had enough of this BS. So I'm going over to Iris Chronomia's talk page and get some accountability. Why did you call my topic a hoax? And you know, Iris, miracles do exist in reality and on Wikipedia. Iris Chronomia says, read and acknowledged. I don't even care. In other words, Iris Chronomia will not be accountable to me, will not give any reasons for the actions that were rejected by the administrators. Iris Chronomia is just here to take potshots at me, not to do as Wikipedia says and to just trust the goodwill of your fellow editors, you know, and reveal your cards to them and work on this grand project cooperatively. Oh no, Iris Chronomia knows either already or in the future we will be coming down on opposite sides of an argument that Iris Chronomia already knows about. So Iris Chronomia just like doesn't give any satisfaction. So that's fine, all right, but I'm going to go back to the NPOV notice board, which is the proper place to draw attention to the fact that my draft was rejected for an absolutely, obviously religiously bigoted reason, where this is a real no-brainer. If someone's going to say miracles have no place on Wikipedia, then we would have to delete all the other articles already up there of like numerous apparitions of Mary throughout the centuries in various places like Fatima, Lourdes, places that get, you know, tens of thousands of pilgrims per year. And so whether or not it's real, the phenomenon is real, and it deserves mention on Wikipedia. So I thought, oh, this will be obvious. People will see Sulphur Boy's completely disgraceful rationale and will like instantly remove it and like get someone else to review my draft. But I was wrong, of course, because Wikipedia isn't like that. Wikipedia is super saturated with hit squads. I call them Wolfpacks, who are going to work together to support Sulphur Boy to the very end and decide that they would rather block me from Wikipedia than make him retract those 4 words. So here comes Sulphur Boy, and Sulphur Boy will start out with their initial response, which is always to prevent me from even getting standing, and he'll say, I'd rather we not dignify a response to this. Dignify means worthy. In other words, I am not worthy to talk here on the NPOV notice board. Note the pompousness. This is like, you know, the royalty in Europe that we were trying to flee from when we founded a government in America founded upon nuts and bolts functionality rather than supreme super eminence. Here he is trying to suggest to everybody else on NPOV notice board that they are so far above me that I shouldn't even be worthy of a response. Like, this is against the whole premise that Wikipedia stands for. One of the 5 pillars is that anybody can edit Wikipedia. Anybody should be able to raise an issue or throw a yellow flag or do anything to get proper due process. And that's just not convenient for Sulphur Boy. So, and you notice the fact that Sulphur Boy even makes this argument suggests that he knows the terrain in the NPOV notice board. And he certainly knows that there are going to be people there for whom this response will be meaningful, i.e. the rest of his Wolfpack. So I am just stumbling into this thing for the first time in my life. I'm like a hapless, naive stag just stumbling into the domain of the wolves. Now, of course, it's not going to be just wolves here because this is the NPOV notice board. So there will be a few honest people here. Absurdum 4042 comes back and says, here's a few changes you should do, Octavius. Excellent ideas. Someone else will come in a second too. Scottish something or other will come and also give great ideas. But notice they're not going to take the fight to Sulphur Boy. They probably know that the Wolfpack is present. And they just have to go about preserving themselves, because as we'll find out in this video, if enough voices are raised against you, it doesn't matter how good your argument is. Rationality does not rule Wikipedia. Ultimately, demagoguery does. Majority vote. They will go through the performative act as if they had a deliberative, fair hearing, court session, and a consensus that you're just basisless, regardless of whether or not you are basisless. And so Absurdum 42 probably knows this and just cannot afford, there's just too much to lose if Absurdum 42 should be run out of here the way I'm about to be run out of here. So in comes some other people. Andy the Grump comes to help. Walter comes to help. And Andy the Grump, it doesn't like my religion, obviously, doesn't like this article, wants to hide it over in the Weeping Statues article. But Andy the Grump's at least going to operate professionally and not try to lie and put on a performative act of being just while he's really, in fact, exercising the greatest corrupt stab-you-in-the-back methods that all the rest will do. So Andy the Grump had a few good objections, and of course I answered them with even better responses since I know this topic more than he does. But in any case, then comes in another good person here, Scottish Finio's an admin, and he says, here's a few more changes you could do, and Slater Stephen agreed, and so yeah, I said, I'll definitely do all these great changes. Now, at this point, everything should be good. I should have gotten good direction at the NPOV notice board. I shouldn't have to worry about whether or not I want my draft to be reviewed instantly, because I've got things that I can work on in the meantime, and then I can resubmit it later. That's fine, no problem. That's reasonable. So I would have been ready to just leave right here. And if I had gotten away with just leaving, that would be fine. But once you post something like this on a notice board asking for help, you can never take it back. It will be always there. So that means any vulture or wolf or lion can choose to take a bite out of it and pull you back there and then just start taking offense at you. And so once you're here, it's like the tar baby, you're stuck. So this becomes the great watershed moment. From this moment right here, all progress, all good interaction stops, and crazy evil blitzkrieg begins. And I'm going to tint the rest of these areas gray so that you'll be reminded that these are the power areas of the wolves. So the first thing that happens is an admin shows up, Bishinen. Bishinen will be the guy who will block me at the end. So he is a bad guy. He will lie compulsively and continuously, pretending like he knows stuff that he doesn't, and also pretending like there's something wrong with you when there isn't. Bishinen is like power abused to the max. And so Bishinen is the battleship in the Wolfpack. Everyone else will just try to parry me to set me up so that Bishinen can blow me out of the water with a broadside when the time is right. But for the moment, Bishinen will pretend to be a decent, normal guy, but he will, right from the start posturing and pretending falsehoods. So he starts off, attacking and will be blocked, ideologue, and not here to build an encyclopedia. Where could he have gotten that notion? Only, obviously, from Sulphur Boy's page. So you know that Sulphur Boy talked to Bishinen behind the scenes and got him to come over here and deal with this Octavius 1981. So what a way to introduce yourself to someone. You're not here to build an encyclopedia. Talk about prejudice. Talk about rush to judgment. What a hypocrisy. Okay, I've been resubmitting an article 3 times as of this point. I've been adding 50 footnotes, and I have been discussing willingly. I just said to everybody here, I'll be willing to do your changes that you suggested. I'm certainly operating according to the spirit of Wikipedia, and he wants to suggest that I'm the one that's not here to build a Wikipedia? What about himself? You know, he's the one who's doing nothing but tearing down the stuff that I'm building, so I gave it 3 Pinocchios. But this is just that textbook tactic, that opening move I told you about, wherein they will try to auto-cancel you at the very first moment you arrive based on some hardly plausible pretext before you even get going, as a way to try to simultaneously throw you out of the ring and glut their prestige and authority with an ego trip. Other people will arrive on his side. 03000 retired. Some kind of military guy says, no, miracles probably don't exist. And he gives some evidence for it. And that would be fine. I could respond to that. But then he had And you also need to strike your charge of bigotry. This is going to be the charge that will sink me. The very fact that I even uttered the word bigotry in relation to Sulphur Boy, whether or not I called him bigot, whether or not I said it emotionally or said it responsibly and carefully, doesn't matter. The very fact that I even pulled up that Wikipedia bigotry charge, which actually totally applies, is going to be an intolerable threat to their wicked power base that they will fight against from this moment to the moment I'm dead. So yeah, you know you're over the target when the anti-aircraft fire becomes deafening. Okay, so Bishanen sees this and flies right over to the notice board and says, agreed. And two other people will do the same thing. Dark Nipples will agree. Someone else will agree in a second too. But Bishanen does double service, multitasks, and says, you called him a bigot 3 times. Okay, no, I didn't call him a bigot. And no, I didn't call him 3 times. I just called him once, and then only said it 2 more times over on the NPOV notice board, where I had to put it in order to pursue due process. But Bishanen takes that as me calling Sulphur Boy a bigot 3 times. Liar. And then he also says this spectacular lie. Also, none of your Washington Post citations support the miracles as being real. Okay, this is such a spectacularly enormous lie. You read even one of these Washington Post articles, they will all attest that something weird paranormal is going on here. I mean, half the time it's right in the title, which says that Bishanen didn't even peruse or glance at these articles before he made this authoritative administrative pronouncement that he has come to this judgment about my credibility vis-a-vis the articles. So Bishanen's malicious evil will is immediately evident to me as of this point. What else happens? I respond to him, no, I said that Sulphur Boy's action would be bigoted unless he took it back. And I've been kind to him. He's just triggered. You know, I'm just trying to downplay it. I'm trying to firefight and put out the inflammatoriness that they're just pulling out in a very unprofessional, un-Wikipedia way. Because I'm already aware that their objective is to get me to blow up. Because if they get all emotional and angry and throw nasty charges at me, that's fine. But if I ever lose my cool for 1 second, that will be cause to block me as not here to build an encyclopedia. And I've had that happen to me before. So I said, why don't you go address Sulphur Boy here, as nobody here has corrected him? Or do you also agree with him that just saying miracles don't exist, sorry, is just fine as a way to respond to an entire draft submission? And he will say it is fine, spectacularly. But first, here comes Tarnished Path, who will agree that I need to strike my charge of bigotry, but he shows his atheistic religious colors and offers a proof that miracles can't possibly exist. Well, you see right now I have 4 dogs surrounding me, as the psalm says. So I have to start responding really fast to people. Hopefully I will do this accurately and precisely, because any fault of mine and my rush to keep up with them will be used against me. So Bishanen says, yes, it was fine. And he brings out his first charge, you're Wikilawyering. Oh, why am I Wikilawyering? And already Sulphur Boy will be making motions for me to be canceled. He'll say, can we be done? He's still calling me a bigot. I wasn't making it hard on you, Sulphur Boy. Sulphur Boy was free to leave. I voluntarily left his page behind and took it up over here on the NPOV notice board. And Sulphur Boy, of his own free will, like a vulture, chose to track the wounded quarry and follow me over here so that he could just personally be present and personally take continuous offense that I should continue to bring up his fault. So he's going to play the victim. And he is working darn hard to follow the person who injured him as closely as he can so that it may appear as if he is being re-injured over and over and over by any word that escapes my mouth, trying to reverse his decision rejecting my draft as some kind of personal attack on him. So Tarnished Path agrees that I need to strike my charge of bigotry. So I respond to all 3 of these people simultaneously. And these are big responses I give. I say, your evidence is wrong to 0300 retired. And I give a whole bunch of evidence why his evidence is wrong. I point out to Bishop and Dark Nipples and Tarnished Path that I already responded to why I don't need to strike my charge of bigotry, because I didn't charge him with bigotry. I only pointed out that his action was bigoted. I did not make it personal. I did not needlessly annoy him. So I point them over there. And then I also tell Tarnished Path that your proof is demonstrably fallacious, as it was. So here comes the train wreck. Okay, as of this moment, I have 45 minutes left to survive on Wikipedia. So everything you see from this moment on is going to happen so fast that it all occurs in 45 minutes. So the wolves are circling and surrounding. But me, with a little voice of reason, or maybe it is an angel in my mind, knowing what's happening, that Christ is being crucified here in the person of me, I extend one last olive branch, as Christ extended olive branches to those who were crucifying him. I said, Sulphur Boy, I'd be happy to take back calling you bigot if you'd civilly talk with me again. In fact, I'd said this several times already, that the real thing I found fault with in Sulphur Boy is not that he said miracles can't exist, or not that he said I called him a bigot falsely, but that the real bigotry of his is that he ceases to talk to me, that he ceases to dialogue about the issue in a rational, responsible way. Because that's what real bigotry is in the world, in real life. It's not what you do, it's what you don't do. You know, white flight. You don't live with the blacks. You know, profiling. You don't accord the black person the benefit of the doubt that they might be acting in good faith. You know, border closings. You don't allow the immigrant into your country. Even though that might not be bigotry, it might be bigotry, because there could be multiple reasons to not let someone into the country. Now, I have to admit, the reason why I offered this olive branch was partly a counterpunch. Because I want you to notice now what it revealed. How utterly unreasonable they are. How out for blood they are. How indefensibly malicious. How utterly cold and callous they are. Caring nothing about horizontal peer-to-peer cooperative endeavor, but only for vertical supremacy and unassailability. They literally want, with me, a parent-child dynamic where I should never have any rights against them, ever. As if they possess all the rights just by royal privilege, and I possess none. For why wouldn't you eagerly agree to get back what you want, which is retraction of the bigotry charge, just in exchange for nothing except being so civil and neighborly as to begin, not for the 10th time, but just for the very first time, to discuss something that is of concern to me? But if I curtsy and bend over backwards for you, and lower the bar so low, and yet you still recoil from showing just basic civil neighborliness, if you still nurse your precious wound, then it's obvious you want one of two things, positive or negative. Either positively, you want even more childish doting, in which case you shouldn't be a reviewer on Wikipedia, or negatively, what you're really waiting for is a retaliatory revenge of your own choosing against me. That is, if there's actually nothing I can do to remedy the situation. Now, the spiritual man judges all things, he himself being judged by no one. And I, being by far the far more spirited party in this debate, even though there's like 6 of them and only 1 of me, sensed this, that Sulphur Boy had put on his final air, his ultimate persona, that he was going to hold and maintain, utterly hardened in his stance, and that it wouldn't matter what I could possibly say, or how I should say it, he would continue to pout, that his eyes were dead set on the goal, and that he would ignore everything else. Because it was obvious to my spirit that he wasn't here for the sake of dialogue at all. No, he was here to assist and then have the pleasure of witnessing an execution. And I wanted to make that starkly obvious. And so that's why I extended this ever so generous olive branch to him, because I knew that he would refuse it. Because there was nothing I could do to pay for my crime except die. It was a capital offense to merely advert to bigotry. And why is it a capital offense? Because bigotry makes their system run. It is their bread and butter. Consequently, I also knew that not only would he refuse it, but that no one else would take him to task for not taking it. For as I said, they were all depending upon this system of bigotry too. It's how they control Wikipedia. And so in offering them this unrequited olive branch, I convict them all of failure to be civil and neighborly, failure to even discuss any possible error of theirs. What's happening here is superiority complex. It's just like white supremacy, but this time it's actually atheistic liberal supremacy. The atheistic diabolical liberal supremacy that holds Wikipedia hostage, fighting tooth and nail to ignore all its policies and all its principles and all the voice of truth and reason in order to maintain its all-important death grip on the claim, the act, the performative pretense of consensus. So we see there that bigotry is fundamentally an unwillingness to engage in the great conversation with someone, which Plato and Aristotle all say is the common good. I brought that up and immediately got blamed by Andy the Grump for bringing up Plato and Aristotle, as if I was being pompous and just making an appeal to authority. No, I'm not making an appeal to authority. The fact is that their argument is really, really good, that societies, human societies, survive and hold together and don't break apart when people talk. And I pointed out to Bishan how excessively wrong he was, providing him with a giant PDF evidence file and telling him, here's the word, you need to search for the word happen in this file, and you will find so many times that you are rebuked in your claim that none of these articles support the miracles as being real. Okay, so Bishan never responded to that, but that didn't get in the way of him blocking me. So Stephen Slater brought up something, and he's a decent guy, but he did note, so now you actually are calling Sulphur Boy himself a bigot, aren't you? And not just Sulphur Boy's decision a bigot, but Sulphur Boy himself. You see, Stephen Slater was attuned to the finesse of my argument, not just being like all these wolves who cross-apply a charge of what you did was bad to cross-applying it to being a charge you are bad. Honestly, they probably are bad, but I didn't presume to convict them of that because there were some possible explanations that Sulphur Boy could have for why he might not have wanted to engage with me further. Maybe he has a psychological anger problem and he just can't control himself anymore for the rest of the day, and so he can't talk with me anymore, you know. He just needs to not get a migraine headache or something. You know, there could be these reasons, but, you know, if we've gone this long and he hasn't provided any explanation for why he's not engaging, then it becomes painfully obvious that the real reason is just personal hatred of me and or my topic. So, yeah, I admitted, yeah, actually I am at this point finally now calling him a bigot, not because he gave me a bigoted decision, but because he refuses to dialogue, because he has cut off the conversation and said, you have no further arguments to make that can be worthy of me or anybody else. So that's drawing the line in the sand. That's separating the camps. That's breaking off diplomatic relations, you know, the final step before war. That speaks louder than anything he could do. And immediately Andy the Grump, who doesn't like my religion, says, you're arrogant. And I explain why I'm not. And he says, submit to my charge that you're arrogant, you know. So no, I'm not going to do that. You have to beat me with reason, not just beat me on the ground of your higher, more exultant experience than mine, i.e. the very arrogance that you're blaming me of. So Stephen Slater suggests that I read Wikipedia Not Dumb, and then he one-ups Andy the Grump's suggestion. I'm not going to respond to that because Bishanen at this point insta-blocks me. Why? For continuing your attacks and Wikilawyering. You know, attacks. Like, I'm just defending myself. Notice how civil I was to Sulphur Boy. Notice how I respond to everybody's charges with reason rather than emotion. With kind words rather than charged fighting words, which they will use. You know, how I avoid actually charging the person as long as I possibly can. All that is attacks. And then, of course, that was just the secondary charge. The primary charge was Wikilawyering, as he had said earlier. And if you go and look up Wikilawyering, he has to give an explanation for how it's Wikilawyering. He will cite some words of mine that supposedly are Wikilawyering, but he doesn't give any explanation how those words of mine are Wikilawyering, and I have no idea how they are.
Strangely, Wikilawyering is defined as obeying the letter of the law rather than the spirit. In fact, there is no way that I am more guilty of Wikilawyering than they are, because I'm the one who was trying to craft a discussion, and they came in like freaking Nazis trying to end it, through the violation of both these principles,
as I will show you now. First, principle number 4, to treat others with respect and civility. Here is really in red the only word and a couple punctuation marks of mine that could be construed as in violation of this. But here are 2 screens worth of comments of theirs that are in violation of respect and civility. Similarly, principle number 2, neutral point of view, was violated by them repeatedly.
Therefore, I am in the spirit of Wikipedia far more than they are. Secondarily, then, this accusation of Wikilawyering is itself an act of Wikilawyering. They psychologically projected their own error onto me, and that's why they find fault with me rather than themselves. But in any case, here's the one sentence below, and maybe also the second sentence above, which was cited as being Wikilawyering, and if you can figure out how that's Wikilawyering, please notify me, because I can't. My best guess is that he finds Wikilawyering in my practice of drawing a subtle distinction between me accusing Sulphur-Boy's action of bigotry, which I did do, and me actually calling Sulphur-Boy himself a bigot, which I didn't. Which happens to be precisely what the page on Wikilawyering tells me to do in this first blue section. Therefore, I cannot help but suspect that the second blue section also applies. That what's really happening here is that I won the debate, and there was no way to get rid of me except by calling me a Wikilawyer.
And in case anyone should say that I did ultimately call him a bigot, well, that was 2 hours after the Wikilawyering charge had already been leveled at me, and 32 hours of him going without talking to me even as I pinged him and he loitered around just to be present and exacerbate the situation. So, that's very strange and makes no sense. It obviously looks to me like this is just a specious excuse of a charge, as I'll argue in a second. But it's good enough of a charge for Iris Chronomia, who shows up again right on time and says, rightly so. You know, pat yourself on the back, Iris Chronomia. You declared yourself the just one. And now, since the decision has been made in your favor, on your side, by your judge, by your administrator, why don't you go take a victory lap and gloat right in my presence about how it is right and just that I should be blocked after all this? You see, there's a big reward waiting for people like Iris Chronomia, and it isn't going to come from any human hand. Okay, but anyways, let's go analyze this. The entire totality of their argument boiled down to, take back your charge of bigotry. And yet that would be a lie, for it was the simplest, most starkest instance of religious bigotry I've ever encountered in my whole life. It's completely obvious. So I'm not going to lie like that. But you see how this was their whole purpose, this whole argument. Over and over, here's their actual words. I'm replacing what I had on the screen with what their actual words are. You can stop the video and read all this if you want, but the whole argument was just, take back your charge of bigotry. And why would that be offensive to them? Because it is their modus operandi, as I said. Bigotry is what they all use over on the NPOV notice board, these people at least, or in maybe other areas of Wikipedia. It is how they operate. I assure you, these people came on Wikipedia as actual ideologues solely so that they could curate and safeguard Wikipedia from anything of religion or conservatism. so that they could present themselves as being the voice of the truth. And so therefore, they don't want to hear the charge of bigotry ever being thrown around anywhere. It doesn't matter that bigotry has an actual page on Wikipedia, as if it is supposed to be brought up normally in the normal working of interactions on Wikipedia. They want it expunged. They do not want it to be socially acceptable to ever utter that word. Okay, so what else? There were even more times that they said I needed to take my charges of bigotry because I couldn't fit it all on one screen. There was all these times. All these people were also piling on to apply enough pressure that I should have to take back my charge of bigotry against Sulphur Boy. Dang you. No, not in eternity. I don't care if I lose my account, my job. You're going to run into the freaking truth in me. Okay? So, anyways. All that, of course, was in response to this quote, which was in response to his 4 words there, miracles aren't real, sorry. So that's what it always boils down to. It's very simple. The kernel, the nut, the crux of it was miracles aren't real, sorry. And what I said, that would be bigotry. Okay. So, my judgment. Yes, I absolutely accuse these people here of bigotry in the highest degree because they persistently and stubbornly defended a man, Sulphur Boy, who is an indefensible, dogmatic, atheistically dogmatic, creedal bigot who had no reliable sources, no other evidence for his actions, no right reason or rational logic, not even good behavior to his own credit. And all these people supported him. Additionally, they not only negatively defended him, but they went on the offensive and positively counterattacked as hard and as nastily and as intensely as they possibly could get away with to thwart any maneuvering or really any action at all of mine as could possibly be. They wanted to tie me down with continuous jobs in which I could conceivably stumble, probably, so that I won't go and bring in more people on my side into the issue. They have to kill me fast before I can do stuff. Therefore, they obviously were completely conscious of the game, and therefore they completely share in all of his guilt, as if they had willed his injustice themselves. And I have no doubt that many or all of them would do exactly as Sulphur Boy did. Okay, so their consciences have got to be tinged and seared to the max. And these people are going to hell. I guarantee it someday, unless they repent. Well, what else can we discover from this episode, this unfortunate collision of wills on Wikipedia? Wikilawyering, the final charge that got me blocked, was just a red herring charge that didn't actually apply. It was just, what was it really? It was really just that their wildly erroneous attacks were so thick and heavy that the lengthy responses, which I had to give in response, seemed akin to legalese. The fact that I was constantly typing makes me guilty of legalese. Really what this charge boils down to is that I'm guilty for merely defending myself at all. I should have just fallen over and not responded to 90% of these charges if I wanted to escape the Wikilawyering charge. In which case, you know what they would have done, it's catch-22. You're damned if you do, damned if you don't. They would have said, oh, Octavius never responded to this charge, and it has sat here all this time, because, they're just going to keep piling up more and more charges faster than I can fight fires, until at least one of them will sit around for a full 24 hours, and then that'll be cause to say Octavius is just being completely unresponsive, and we need to block him for that reason, right? He's not behaving in a group manner on Wikipedia, right? So I was therefore supposed to just foresee that I was already in the catch-22 and just auto-surrender in terror, in awe and amazement whenever they would swing around their prestige as so much better and superior to me. Okay. What else can we discover from this episode? Jab, jab, jab. That's how they act. The lesser wolves, not the big one, Battleship Bishan. No, all the other ones are constantly trying to get me to blow up by doing absolutely outrageous behaviors, which if I did them, I would be called out for and hauled into a notice board somewhere instantly. This is the old communist trick of repressive tolerance. You go look that up on James Lindsay's page, which is New Discourses. The idea is that there should be tolerance for those on the left, not tolerance for those on the right. That's what tolerance is. It's a special term that communists, which is nowadays are woke neo-Marxists, use. Repressive tolerance. That repression here, tolerance there. So they are going to show how tolerant they are of one another's views. But as for me, nothing but total suppression. Okay, but I knew this, and I didn't get angry. And I parried off their strikes consistently and mildly, exposing their repeated ignorance about my topic, which I know about, and they don't. And that made them angry. I put egg on their faces. That made them look bad. The fact that I could send Bishon in a full PDF response, which he to this day hasn't responded to, could be ground someday to cancel him, right? So once I started winning, they got angry. And because I didn't blow up too, they ultimately had to cancel me with the Wikilawyering charge, which was really a cloak to hide the real fault, which was that the process of canceling me was taking too much time. It was as if there was a literal clock ticking, and you could see, if you watch those time minutes, that it got more and more intense, faster and faster and faster, like a train wreck up to the moment that I was canceled. And as you'll see now, multiple times they adverted to the fact that there was this hidden clock ticking and that they were going to cancel me before it reached a certain time. So ultimately, I soundly whipped them an argument, and they got frustrated, and that's why they first badmouthed and then blocked me. Okay, moving on from analysis to conclusions. It's my assessment that there is a stark divide on Wikipedia between the actual helpers, people like Absurd 4242 and Scottish whatever, and the wolves, whose consistent and endless agenda, the one thing that all their actions aim at, is to cancel your topic, and even you yourself if necessary, at all costs. Because they have to control, for the course of world history, what gets onto Wikipedia. And they cannot tolerate that there should be any evidence of the supernatural, particularly the Christian supernatural, on Wikipedia. These wolves commit endless injustices, placing endless requirements on you that they themselves don't observe. There's your repressive tolerance. One wolf attacks with egregious impunity, while the others wait and watch to pounce on you for any misstep. And they never pounce on a fellow wolf. They never say, oh, that's a little bit too excessive there. Or, hey, you do have some arguments in your favor. Oh, no. There's none of this willing trusting. They will tell you to willingly trust them and assume good intent in them, but they will never give you the benefit of the doubt over anything. And meanwhile, those who are actually honest and helpers are disorganized, and they can never save you lest they themselves be attacked. Because what would happen if they banded together and decided, we're going to go after the wolves? Do you know what would happen? The wolves would say, oh no, this is a fight for the future of the entire world. We will pull in 100 people from universities across the planet who agree with us, and we will just slug it out. And then all these good people of good intent here on Wikipedia, like Absurd 42 and Scottish, they would spend all their time just battling the legalisms. And they wouldn't actually build Wikipedia. And they would probably lose in the end anyway. So what's the point? And that's why my conclusion is that Wikipedia is a massive judgment on our entire democratic egalitarian society. I'll get into that later, but first, notice what else we can conclude. The whole goal, the key quality that you need as a Wikipedia editor is willingness to be flexible and wishy-washy, even to the point of lying. You have to lie. Flexible wishy-washiness is the start of it. Actual lying is the perfection of it. Why? For the sake of maintaining good vibes and smoothing over group dynamics, so that in such a group, a wolf pack like this, there can be one person who can kind of direct in a loose way everybody to the next objective. And everybody else doesn't have to worry about the details. All that matters is the outcome, not the nitty-gritty logic. Okay, so some of these wolves ideologically hate you. Some of the wolves want to lord it over you just for the pleasure of the prestige. And some just want to avoid conflict and will therefore throw their lot with the wolves and take a pot shot at you just so that their social credit score will grow with the wolves. You know, people like maybe Andy the Grump. But all of these will gang up on you. So what else? What else can we conclude? This is crazy, but, you know, honestly, someone in these wolves did an actual curse and hex on me because, like, the signs were popping out of the woodwork. I had my first ever dream of Satan in decades. A picture just fell off my wall behind me here in the hall. Minutes later, a glass bowl shattered across my floor just because the radio was playing, and apparently the micro vibrations enabled it to walk off the shelf. The glass bowl sat there for decades and decades, but now it falls off. Minutes later after that, a fire truck and ambulance were called to my house just from the other side of the county by a mistaken coincidence. At other times, my chandelier started flickering in really annoying ways, and an ugly, violent wasp took over my kitchen for 3 days. So ultimately, I think this Wikipedia is a parable on our entire Western society, our democratic project. We're finding out through this that free speech is, in fact, a bad thing. Whenever the people are virtuous, it's a wonderful thing, as they were virtuous when this country started. Many of our founding fathers said that democracy would not survive without religion. And that's why they had established churches right to the Civil War. But our public schools don't want to acknowledge that fact. And they do barely acknowledge it, but they imply that it was the bad thing, the thing that was ending, you know, the wrong direction of history. The right direction was toward religious freedom, you know. But if you do have true religious freedom, guess who gets to participate? Satan. And vice, if you don't believe in Satan, and fallen human nature get to have a field day on the good people. So on Wikipedia, you see here 2/3 of the people are unvirtuous, is my estimation. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's only half or 1/3. Maybe just the bad people have a disproportionate effect, footprint. But it does seem like it's rare to run into someone who's honest and upright on Wikipedia. So Wikipedia is running into the ancient problem of the fallenness of human nature. We saw this like in the time of the Reformation, where as soon as the Catholic Church was run out of the place, no more exorcisms are occurring. What happened? We got just bizarre supernatural craziness started all across Europe, and we started getting witch trials, you know. Now, of course, witch trials did precede and occur in earlier centuries under Catholicism, but they became enormous in the 15 and 1600s, especially in the northern Protestant countries. So people were just like losing their mind. You think that the Salem witch trials was anything? You ain't seen nothing yet. And we saw it in like Nazi Germany, that when everybody dedicates themselves to victory and yells Sieg Heil and just focuses only on that success rather than any sins and injustices on their own side, then obviously evil has enormous power to hurt anybody in secret and not be punished. So you get things like the Holocaust and the horrific atrocities that occurred in World War II. So ultimately, Wiki-Wolf-packs are a massive problem on Wikipedia, and there needs to be some kind of AI tracker to see who is partnering with whom and to break these things up. And that's why I'm making this video, so that this can hopefully be stopped in its literal tracks.